أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الصلاة والسلام على رسولنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه وأتباعه وسلم. So we have been studying the steps of divine unity in everything around us, and for that we have been studying 22nd word. The first station of it was about a metaphor. And the second station, which we have been studying for the last month, is about verses such as God is the creator of all things, and he is the guardian and disposer of all affairs. To him belong the keys of the heavens and the earth. So glory to him in whose hands is the sovereignty of all things, and to him will you all be brought back. And there is not a thing but its sources and treasures inexhaustible are with us, but we only send down thereof in due and ascertainable measures. There is not a moving creature, but he has grasp of its forelock. Verily it is my sustainer that is on a straight path. These were the verses. Then in the 22nd or second station, there were 12 flashes. We studied 1 through 4. The first flash was starting with two types of divine unity. One was superficial. The second one was true affirmation of divine unity. Then there was a reminder within there saying that causes are not the agents that do things. In the second flash, author started showing us divine unity within life. First it was on life. In the third flash, it was on living beings. And in the fourth flash, it was on the giving of life, or how life is manifest, how life comes into being. So we went halfway through the fourth flash, and inshallah we will continue from the second half today. So I guess there was this, the main theme, he came up with this example of water droplets. You know, every water droplet after rain, let's say, or anything that is shining, you can see a reflection of sun. And either if you deny that there must exist a sun above and beyond the things that I am seeing, and these are all the reflection of this sun, then you will have to accept a sun which exists within every single thing that you see the reflection of the sun. This was the metaphor. Then he said, in the same way, there is such a signature on all living beings in regard to giving of life from among the luminous manifestation of the pre-eternal sun. So then he talked about as if life is such a, because what's happening in the reflection of water droplet, why was he giving the example of water droplet? Because the flower is also a reflection of the sun, right? But this flower over there is just reflecting the purple color. Or the other one over there is just reflecting the green color in the sun's light. So it's not being a perfect mirror. But when it comes to water droplets, whatever you observe in the sun out there, it's pretty much being reflected on a small water droplets, although smaller in scale, but most of the properties are there. It says, when you look at the life, how it is being manifest, you will see this many features in there. So likewise, if you deny one maker, then you will have to accept all of them. This was, I guess, in a nutshell, what was discussed last time. There were some details, but if you remember, remind us.
I remember what we said, but I'm trying to remember the context. Like, why did we come to that? I think I was questioning, like, why. We kept reading this, and you kept saying how it would be ridiculous or it wouldn't make sense to accept all those water droplets to have a sun, which makes sense. But then I was wondering,
So then read the last paragraph, the one that starts with "in short." So if you can remember the comment.
In short, if the miniature suns and various colors in droplets of water and fragments of glass are not attributed to the sun's reflection and the manifestation of its reflection, one has to accept the existence of innumerable suns in place of the one sun. It necessitates accepting an utterly impossible superstition. In exactly the same way, if everything is not attributed to the absolutely powerful one, it necessitates accepting infinite gods instead of the single God. Indeed, gods to the number of particles in existence, thus falling to the degree of accepting 100-fold impossibility. And I guess the context was, why is it 100-fold impossibility? Because with the water droplets, it's obvious. But then when I look at particles, it doesn't become so obvious to me. And then we were talking about how, because everything is so connected and dependent on each other, one particle would have to have knowledge about the whole universe. Would have to have, know where everything, or about everything that's happening in the universe. And for one part, and then that's basically saying that one particle basically encompasses the whole universe. And if we're just looking at 2D just existence as a universe, and we're saying the whole universe must exist within one particle at the same time. And it's like a logical contradiction. Like, it doesn't make sense for something like that. If you come to the conclusion that a particle needs to know everything and needs to encompass knowledge and power and will for everything, then you can't say that a particle is, you can't accept it to be a god, or it's just a logical contradiction.
Yes. I mean, it's not only very unlikely, because you can say that it's unlikely. This is one way to take it, right? Saying that, well, come on, man, just accepting one God is much easier than accepting infinitely many gods. So, come on. So this would make it very, very unlikely. So you better accept one instead of infinitely many. When it comes to impossibility part of it, once I deny that this existence must have a source, not of type of this existence, then the source of existence has to be of type of this existence. Right? So then, since this minute manifestation that I observe in a living being is sort of identical to the whole existence, as if whatever is being manifest in the whole existence needs to be within this smallest living being. So this is why, in terms of knowledge, power, whatever is being manifest out there, everything needs to be in here. So one of the things has to be everything at the same time, which makes it a contradiction. Yeah. Because when you come up with the description for the absolute creator, you're saying that the source needs to be outside of this existence, not of type of this existence. And you're not trying to define, because undefinable by definition anyways. Alhamdulillah, this was an important point for me, because it really solved a question mark for me for over several years. Alhamdulillah. Because he makes the same comment in Tabiat, the 23rd flash as well. And I was just reading it through quickly, saying that, well, this is just as if author is using some sort of a overgeneralization. I mean, it's not exactly impossible, but very, very unlikely. But he's just using 1,000-fold impossibility just colloquially, not really. But from this point of view, he truly means it's impossibility.
So we're at the bottom of page 307 for us. To sum up, from every particle, 3 windows open up onto the light of unity and necessary existence of the pre-eternal sun. From every particle, 3 windows open up into the light of unity and necessary existence of the pre-eternal sun. First window, a soldier has a relation with each of the spheres of the military. That is, with his squad, his company, his battalion, his regiment, his division, and the army. and duties in accordance with those relations and actions, in accordance with the duties and army regulations. Particles have similar relations. For example, a lifeless particle in the pupil of your eye has relations with your eye, your head, your body, your powers of reproduction and attraction and repulsion, with your veins and arteries, and motor and sensory nerves, and with the rest of the human race. And it has duties in relation to each. This shows self-evidently to eyes that are not blind that it is the work of art and charged official of the pre-eternal, all-powerful one, and is under his regulation. Second window, all molecules of air may visit all flowers and fruits. They may also enter them and work within them. If they are not the subjugated officials of an absolutely powerful one who sees and knows all things, those wandering molecules would have to know all the systems and structures of the fruits and flowers and their art, and the tailoring of the all different forms which clothe them with its perfect and all-embracing art. Thus, those particles all display as clearly as the sun the rays of a light of divine unity. You may compare light with air and earth with water. In any event, the original sources of things are these four substances. According to modern science, they are hydrogen, oxygen, carbon, and nitrogen, the components of the former elements. Should I read the third window?
As you wish.
Third window. You fill a flower pot with some earth, which is composed of particles and is the means of growth of any flowering or fruit-bearing plant. Then put some seeds in it. The same as the seed of animals does not differ, but is a fluid. The seeds of all the flowering and fruit-bearing plants in the world do not differ from one another. Being composed of carbon, nitrogen, hydrogen, and oxygen, they only differ by virtue of the program of their progenitors, deposited in them through the immaterial writing of the pen of divine determining. Thus, if we put these seeds in turn in the flower pot, we believe as though it has occurred that each plant will appear together with its wonderful forms and shapes and parts. If those particles are not officials under the orders of one who knows all the states and conditions of everything, is capable of giving everything a being suitable to it and everything necessary for it, and to whose power everything is subjugated with utterly facility, every particle of the earth would then have to contain immaterial factories and printing presses to the number of all the flowering and fruit-bearing plants, so that it could be the source of all those various and different beings, whose parts, members, and forms are all distant and different from one another. It is otherwise necessary to attribute to all those beings comprehensive knowledge and a power capable of forming them, so that they could be the means of the above. I think we should stop at this part, maybe. Or should I continue?
Just one more paragraph.
Okay, so one more paragraph. That is to say, if the connection with Almighty God is severed, it becomes necessary to accept gods to the number of particles of earth, and this is an impossible superstition, compounded 1,000 times over. However, when they are officials, it becomes extremely easy. Just as in his king's name and through his power, a common soldier of a mighty king can make a whole country migrate, or join two seas, or take another king prisoner, so at the command of the monarch of pre-eternity and post-eternity, a fly did away with Nimrod, and an ant destroyed Pharaoh's palace, razing it to the ground, and a fig seed bears the load of a fig tree. So I'm going to pause there, and we can talk about these three windows that the author says open up to the light of unity and necessary existence of the pre-eternal Son. Yeah, so if anyone has any comments right now, we can take them. If not, please feel free to interrupt me at any point. I remember last week I had the question of what it meant for something to be an official of the creator and its source of existence. And I think we had talked about how something like a particle becomes an official when with its existence it declares that it cannot be the source of doing whatever it's doing in that moment. It can't be the source of the action it's completing or the duty or whatnot. So in its lack of action or incompetence or inability to produce anything by itself, it declares and points to the actual source, thereby being an official of that source. So I guess this kind of goes a little contrary to how we may usually think of an official, but I think it made sense for me. And yeah, so we can go through the first window, start with the first window at least, but I'll pause if anyone has any comments or questions they have at this point. Okay, if not, let's just, I guess, go through the sentences one by one, and inshallah we can make sense of them. So again, these three windows are supposed to summarize what we had read so far from last week's discussion, and showcase how these three examples point to the light of unity and necessary existence of the pre-eternal sun, or the source of existence of the universe. In the first window, Nursi starting with the example of a soldier and talking about how the soldier has a relation with each of the spheres of the military. So I don't know much about the military, but I think like a soldier there's different hierarchies and you have to report to each of them, and your fellow soldiers and coordinate with them, and like your boss, or the colonel or captain or whatever, and your duties are in accordance with these relations. So he's comparing a particle, and he says lifeless particle, with a soldier, a particle in the pupil of your eye. And this also reminds me of the example I was giving last week about a cat, and how like the cat's eyes just change seemingly by itself, like definitely not on purpose by the cat, but if it gets excited, like the eye grows bigger. If it wants to act cute, it definitely suddenly becomes cute, and how the cat does this without necessarily knowing it. And that in order for this to happen, like the particle in the pupil would have to know its relationship with light and everything around it, and basically the order and system of the entire universe. So here again, Nursi's talking about how the relation also, how this particle must also have relations with each aspect and member of one's body. Your eye, your head, your body, your powers of reproduction and traction, repulsion, veins and arteries, and motor and sensory nerves, and so forth. And that in this sense, because this lifeless particle can't be the source of any sort of conscious relation with any of these parts, it acts as a work of art and charged official of the pre-eternal, all-powerful one, and is under his regulation. Even though, but this sentence also confuses me, because regulation seems very much like, you know, you do your work and I'll regulate you time to time. You know, it gives me that sense, as if you have workers in a factory and you're just checking up on them every now and then, instead of, you know, directly being the source of every single process that's taking place. So maybe we can talk about how we can understand what it means for something like a lifeless particle to be under the regulation of the eternal, all-powerful one. because that's a little confusing to me. Anyone have thoughts they'd like to share on that? She's thought.
I was thinking about why is he was talking about life, right? Not only life, but giving of life.
Right, in the prior paragraphs.
Yeah, so he says in the fourth flesh, especially he is going to talk about, he wants us to focus on how life is being given. I mean, is being given is, of course, a biased word, but just the act of the verb, the action of life coming into being. And so for that, we should be looking for, since it's an action, it should be, I guess, within the time domain, because it's an ongoing thing. It's not like if it was this art, if it is done once and it stays there, so you can talk about the art of the artist or the quality of the artist on art, okay, still you can talk. But if I tell you that I'm going to tell you the uniqueness of the artist as she is writing them, then this is another aspect. So in this fourth topic, fourth flesh, he's talking about as life, the act of giving of life. So I guess the reason that those three windows, they must be addressing different aspects of it for sure. In the first window, when he gives the example of an army is think about the army in the battlefield. So it's like a living organism because it's moving. And it's going to attack another army, whatever, but it's like a living organism. It's constantly updating. It's not that, okay, once you settle, you stay there. You set the army into its pieces. You should be silent. So once you set it up into groups, it doesn't stay like this because the enemy is going to attack it. So you need to change the formation. It's an environment. It requires update.
It's dynamic.
It's a dynamic, yes. So now he talks about my body as a living being. My body is not studied either. So what sort of a update or dynamism is in there? Because this part we generally ignore when it comes to, especially when we go with scientific narrative, as Şükran abi would say. So let's say if somehow by chance we can put the things together enough to make the first amino acid, then things would be fine because it can evolve by itself. This is the mentality. So if in the lab environment somehow, if we can form a single amino acid, then we don't need to worry about the rest. It's sort of, we made a proof of concept. So now the author is talking about life and what is really being manifested in life. Is it just simply an amino acid being made in there? Or is it an ongoing thing which requires, like in this case, he's talking about a particle in my pupil of my eye. So this part, because this particle doesn't stay there forever. It was not there before, it's not going to be there a few minutes later. It's moving, it's constantly updating. So what is required for locating this particle right there, right now? Because it's functioning as part of so much so that I can experience life. What is required for this particle to be there properly? It's not only a matter of just good chance for a moment now. It requires knowledge about past and the future of me, of my eye, of my head, of my body, of my species. So this is why it now encompasses the whole existence in space and time domain, not only at a single frame of time. So this was a important point for me, I guess.
So, I mean, that makes sense, and you know, the idea that it can't be something like you know, a scientist goes in a lab and just periodically checks on it because it's doing the thing, whatever it's doing by itself. And that's the sort of notion that I usually get when I think about something regulating another thing. Like you just check up on it time to time or on a regular basis. Which is why the word regulation confused me, because the descriptions that it's giving of the particle or that soldier are ones that are dynamic and constant, like constant change being involved in it. So should we just take is under his regulation to mean under his continuous dominion?
Yes, I guess so.
Or am I just kind of taking words and replacing them by projecting my own understanding?
It fits my understanding. I don't know what else you
Otherwise, everything would not be. Some things would have power and knowledge by themselves, right?
Okay. Any questions at this point? All right. We can check out the second window if we're satisfied with the first window. Feel free to interrupt again. So he says, all molecules of air may visit all flowers and fruits. So now he's giving the example of molecules of air and how they interact with fruits and flowers. They may also enter them and work within them. If they are not the subjugated officials, and I think the word subjugated there is important, because it's not an official that has any power or independence of its own. Subjugated officials are an absolutely powerful one who sees and knows all things. Those wandering molecules would have to know all the systems and structures of the fruits and flowers and their art, and the tailoring of the all different forms, which clothe them with its perfect and all-embracing art. Thus, those particles all display as clearly as the sun the rays of a light. Thus, those particles all display as clearly as the sun the rays of a light of divine unity, which I'm understanding as the ray of a light of an absolute one. You may compare light with air and earth with water. In any event, the original sources of things are these four substances. According to modern science, they are hydrogen, oxygen, carbon, and nitrogen, the components of the former elements. So it seems like he's giving a very similar example like that of the soldier and the particle of the eye, in the same way that molecules of air interact with fruits and flowers or anything really. They have to know the entire systems and structures of these very complex beings. I mean, like I don't remember much from my biology classes, but even just like the cells of a fruit or a flower are all very complex, and the navigation of that wandering molecule of air, all of what it does, it can only do if it had the power of an absolute one, as it says. I mean, I get the example, but I'm trying to understand if it's highlighting a different aspect that the first window doesn't. Or if it's just kind of trying to re-emphasize the point with a different example. Any ideas?
I guess in the first one, going off the eye example, the particle in your eye would know you, let's say Yusuf, but we're not talking about whether or not, we're not saying it knows also me or someone else. But then in the second example, we're also saying the same particle, if you could theoretically take it out of your eye and put it in my eye, it should also function similarly. And that would mean it had to also know me, not just you. And then you can take it and put it in someone else's eye, it also function correctly. So this particle has to know every human, basically, because it would function correctly in all of them, theoretically.
So I think in the first example, the particle in my eye would know you as well, but as if in the first one he is taking the particle in my eye at the center of existence and saying that it is related to with the rest of the existence because of me. So since I and you are somehow related in this system of existence, the particle in my eye should know you as well, but it is for the purpose of me fulfilling my life. I am at the center, because the manifestation of life in me requires that I am functioning in the same existence with you. I mean, in the larger scale, for example, you are part of the quote-unquote ecosystem, and I am too. So we are related somewhat. So for me to survive, somehow you need to be functioning properly. But the particle in my eye, in this example, is as if trying to maximize its positioning so that I'm going to keep surviving in this existence. So it knows what you're going to do because of this reason. But in the second example, it says this particle is not only going to stay there, though. I mean, the purpose of this particle is not only to make Yusuf survive. If you take this particle out and put it into Abdurrahman, it's just going to change the roles and you'll immediately start trying to maximize the life of Abdurrahman now. It is ready to work for anybody. It works perfectly for me. And again, for it to work for me perfectly requires that it knows everything, but also it can work for anybody else. So you are now working in a company. So in your company, you have a position relative to within your desk, within the smaller group that you're working in, within the unit that you're working in. And imagine as if your company is, within the human system, was located perfectly in the economic system of America in which everybody was perfectly happy, which is not the case. But let's assume this is the case. Then, while working on your desk, you should be taking into account the person, I don't know, in the other, Alaska, let's say. But this is for the first window. In the second window, I take you away from this company, put you into another company, and you start working in there perfectly as well. As if you are now going to maximize another factory, the job of another company. You're not only trying to maximize yourself. So it's like talking about the same thing in terms of, again, requiring the overall knowledge, overall power need to be there, but from a different angle now. Because now you can work for any company, any factory. So in this case, this particle in my eye, if you take it away from it, put it into your eyes, put it into a bee's eye, a baby's eye, it's going to function perfect in there.
And I was also just thinking of, like a soldier, going back to the soldier example, a soldier has to know all the types of relations it has within that one military. But that air molecule would have to know all the various different systems of all the different types of fruits, not just a single fruit or a single flower, but all the different types of species and whatnots of flowers. Yeah. I'm not sure what it's trying to say when it says you may compare light with air and earth with water, or why it's making mention of like the four substances.
Look, this mobility, so I guess the point in here is there's a constant change in the existence. Everything is mobile, and anything that is mobile is manifesting this truth. Air is the most mobile thing that we observe. I just breathe air, take it out, and then it immediately gets into this plant. And eventually it ends up in Abdurrahman. So it's very likely that the same oxygen molecule is going to end up in Abdurrahman within an hour, maybe. So it's practically really something that worked for me is going to become part of Abdurrahman eventually. So, but look, my handsomeness and his ugliness. So the particle is going to function properly in wherever it goes. It's really interesting because we take many of the things for granted. I mean, I keep being me. I'm not changing face constantly. Like tomorrow morning, I'm waking up somebody else and Mariam says, "Ooh, what's going on here?" It doesn't happen. So this is, I guess, when he says the particle needs to know my yesterday and needs to know my tomorrow and properly locate itself right now. Because at some point I was like this baby, so way different than what I look like right now. Not horribly different, but so the particles, like second by second, locating themselves so that today my face is going to become my like old phase within, I don't know if God gives me life in 20 years. So still, I'm not identical copies of myself after every second. So there is a change in me. Still, this particle is moving in a way that I'm going to end up being that old Yusuf. I'm not going to become old Abdurrahman. Like this particle is acting in such a way. So it knows me yesterday, it should know me tomorrow, so that it's going to locate itself accordingly. So these are the things that is being manifest out there, like in here. But we just take it for granted and we forget it.
Right, and it's saying that through, that one particle, it acts as a very clear evidence or sign towards an absolute one. And it says that thus those particles all display as clearly as the sun the rays of a light of divine unity. So for those that just joined in, we're in the 22nd word, second station, fourth flash, and we're reading about the three windows. We're very happy to have you, Farazan. Please don't apologize. So if anyone has any comments, they can feel free to interrupt me. If not, I'm just going to go into the third window. You as well. Awesome. They're all apologizing now. I meant it as a welcoming gesture, like, hey, this is where we are, not trying to call out anyone. Okay. So the third window, we can go over it. Says you fill a flower pot with some earth, which is composed of particles and is the means of growth of any flowering or fruit-bearing plant. Then put some seeds in it. The same as the seeds of animals does not differ, but is a fluid. The seeds of all the flowering and fruit-bearing plants in the world do not differ from one another. Being composed of carbon, nitrogen, hydrogen, and oxygen, they only differ by virtue of the program of their progenitors, deposited in them through the immaterial writing of the pen of divine determining. So now I suppose it's talking about, what it is for something to be a seed and how from that seed, from any seed that's all composed of carbon, nitrogen, hydrogen, and oxygen, come out various fruits and flowers and whatnot. It's interesting that it says through the immaterial writing of the pen of divine determining. Any comments, questions from those online or from those here? Any comments? Let me just continue with the second part of it. It says, thus, if we put these seeds in turn in the flower pot, we believe as though it has occurred that each plant will appear together with its wonderful forms and shapes and parts. If those particles are not officials under the orders of one who knows all the states and conditions of everything, is capable of giving everything and being suitable to it and everything necessary for it, and to whose power everything is subjugated with utterly facility, every particle of the earth would then have to contain immaterial factories and printing presses to the number of all the flowering and fruit-bearing plants, so that it could be the source of all those various and different beings, whose parts, members, and forms are all distant and different from one another. It is otherwise necessary to attribute to all those beings comprehensive knowledge and a power capable of forming them, so that they could be the means of the above. So does anyone want to summarize what the author is saying here? And it's a little wordy, I feel.
What I understand.
Yeah, go for it.
Should I go ahead?
Yeah.
Is so you have hydrogen, carbon, oxygen, and whatever else, some elements. So let's just imagine like 4 atoms or molecules in our minds, and then you take these 4 and you put it in some place, and then it becomes a flower, like some type of plant, and then you take it and put it in a different type of soil, apparently it's all still the same hydrogen, nitrogen, carbon, oxygen. It's all still just using that. It comes with a different flower. And if I'm saying that it's the hydrogen, it's the carbon, it's the nitrogen, oxygen that is doing this, that is creating these plants, or is the source of these plants, then I would have to also say that somehow these elements or these atoms include within them knowledge, all the knowledge of these different things. Like they need to have a printing press of knowledge within them, like to be able to make all of those different things. Since that's all what everything is composed of. That's what I understand.
Just to add on to that, I guess one thing that I was thinking about, the immaterial writing of the pen of divine determining. Going back to Abdul Rahman's point, like all of these different seeds, you put them into the same soil, yet different fruits and flowers come out. And when you look at their material being, they're composed of the same thing, just arranged perhaps differently, but essentially they're the same. So I'm wondering, this is more of a question than a comment, but the immaterial writing of the pen of divine determining, I think in part the author is also saying, can it be so that from the exact same material things, different things can come about? And then I'm not exactly sure what it's referring to as immaterial writing. I guess like there's a code in it, within the seed there's a code, right? Otherwise, when you put the same seed, I mean, they're still different, I guess, but the composition is still the same. So what you're asking, can you repeat your question, Mr. Ricky? What does author mean by the immaterial writing of the pen of the divine determining? Go ahead.
I'm so embarrassingly late to the discussion that I don't want to say anything, but that's a very good question, because if you look at the seed, and if I'm going to say that there are instructions written in it, but am I not supposed to look at it and say the seed is not able to do it? So as if I would be saying the opposite things at the same time. I would be looking at the seed and saying, I see that you're not able to do it. And at the same time, if I didn't say the word immaterial, as if I would be saying, no, you have instructions written in you of how to do these things. So I don't know if I'm getting through, but actually if you think about it, it's self-contradictory to say those two things. If you look at the seed, and if I can say there are instructions for the entire tree in the seed, then I cannot simultaneously say the seed has no ability or power to create the tree. But I just said that the tree has the whole program. So therefore, when I say that this, I think what I want to understand is that as far as the seed is concerned, as I observe it as a material, as a material thing, it has no instructions. I don't see any knowledge there of the seed in this, like in the material of the seed, which is the seed, when I call seed, when I look at it without referring to revelation, I say seed. This is seed, the material seed. That's what I see. But that material doesn't give me any sense that there are instructions. It can have a whole program or instructions about how to make the tree. There's no such thing there. It's just matter, it's just DNA and cells. Like how can they have these instructions and knowledge and whatnot? So, but then I want to say that when I put the seed, there's this huge tree coming out of it. So how is it happening? And again, it as a matter of speech, as a matter of expression, almost metaphorically, I'm saying, it is as if that the seed had the full set of instructions for how to make the tree. But then but I don't want to say that these are actually materially there, the instructions. So I guess one way to express, that is maybe when you use the word immaterial, you emphasize that, it's as far as the material observation of the matter of the seed is concerned, there are no such instructions. Because if there are such instructions in the material itself, then you don't need God, because then the seed has, in the material of the seed, there are instructions and codes, which is what the materialist and the naturalist would say, that, I see that the seed knows how to make a tree, and I put it, and it makes a tree. So it has all the instructions there. But then that's the point of dispute, is it that the material of the seed itself has those instructions, or it doesn't? And if I say it doesn't, then I can't go back and say it has it, it would be contradictory. So that's why you have to say, to not contradict yourself, I don't know if I was able to get through, and maybe I'm confused, maybe I'm wrong, but that's kind of my sense.
Thank you, Karzal. I was thinking, I guess by saying immaterial, in a way, it's redefining what I would normally constitute a seed as just the material seed itself. So that's one main point that I got, because when I look at the seeds, right, they're composed of the same thing, yet different things come out of it. And if I, as what I understood from what you were saying, if I were to say that the code is written in the seed, then it's contrary to the way that I initially view the seed. So I guess with the immaterial writing of the pen, the seed pointing to something beyond itself, but at the same time redefining the way that I may define a seed as just the 4 elements or whatever.
Yeah, I thought that was very helpful, and I think what I got from that is that it's created in such a way, I find the seed in such a way in which no aspect of it can I attribute any qualities that it must have in order to produce what it does. And in that sense, those qualities are deposited in it, through the words of the author, through the immaterial writing of the pen of divine determining. Because there is no, if you will, material aspect of it, or aspect that I can interact with experience that shows to me that it's capable of producing what it does. Yeah, thank you, Razak. You're most welcome in your contributions. Please continue to contribute. We're very happy to have you.
Thank you. You're very kind. Thank you.
Would anyone else like to say anything? Yeah, please.
In the first window, he talked about a particle in the eye. So if we were applying the same logic to the third window, he would be talking about a particle in the seed. So, but this is covered. In the second window, he's talking about a moving particle that enters into a body. So if we apply it to the third window, it would be some particle from outside comes and works inside the seed and become a plant. But in the third one, he is addressing it from a different perspective. He is saying that maybe this is seed, but it's like this compact disc, like CD or DVD. It gets into another driver, and then this driver does the job. Like as if the seed is the program, but the soil is really what's going to do the job. So you put it inside as if some outside processing unit, which is going to do the job. So another perspective, he's saying as if, and in theory, we know that given this soil, small pot of soil, whichever disc or DVD, I'm going to put it inside, a different plant is going to come out of it. So then the third point might be that in this pot of soil, as if there is sort of a system which recognizes whatever program you put into it, and it's going to produce it for you. So you can also entertain such an idea, saying that as if there is a cloud-like, invisible reader, disk reader, and if you put it into here, and it's going to produce it. And inherently we think about this, if we pay attention to the way that we are interpreting existence, we say as if, I guess this applies most to laws of nature, as if we say gravity pulls this, like this object is falling down and gravity is pulling it. So when we say, what do I mean by that? As if I am imagining there is something that encapsulates this environment, which is called gravity, and it is pulling things. It's invisible, but it's everywhere. It is pulling things down. And now the author is saying that you can apply this to a small pot of soil, and you put this seed into it. It is reading the message as if, and it is just starting to produce all different leaves and flowers and everything out of this. So do you think what it sounds like? It means as if it can read a message in it, because the message needs to be immaterial. Because otherwise, if you go with the previous 2 points, they are simply carbon atoms, or like ink. In our words, this would be just simply ink. The paper in front of me is painted with or dirtied with ink. For it to become meaningful to me, it needs to have some sort of a invisible meaning. Meaning is not visible on this paper. What is visible on the paper is just ink, which is dirt. So there needs to be a meaning, which now I'm talking about another dimension. So I would need to assume the same with the seed. So then there needs to be a invisible, immaterial factory, which is going to read the message, understand the message, and start producing a plant out of the seed. So now this is another perspective, because we can apply the previous 2 windows into the seed example as well. But there's something more in this seed example.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because I was wondering, what is it that differentiates these 3 examples from one another? Like if not, they just kind of become redundant, emphasizing the same point. But it's interesting that I think it could be correct to say that methodology-wise, he's showing the different, showing different ways, how different ways of approaching the existence of something can be negated. And once you negate those perspectives, if you will, then you arrive to what the phrase that he used in the very beginning, light of unity and necessary existence of the pre-eternal Son. So you can say, what about this way, or what about that way? And he's saying, no, none of those options work out through these reasons. So that makes sense to me.
And it's interesting that we are looking at the same thing, but from different perspectives, and they show us different things. So if you apply everything to the seed example, let's say, you would see those 3 windows within the same seed example as well. But in the same example, if you look from this angle, it shows you divine unity. From another angle, still shows you divine unity. From a third angle, still it shows you divine unity. So this is what the author is showing. From various different angles, the single particle shows us divine unity. And this is what he said at the very first sentence, right? From every particle, 3 windows open up onto the light of unity and necessary existence of pre-eternal Son. From every particle. So it opens 3 different windows. So from three different angles, it shows you divine unity. So it gives you a rich perspective. A single particle gives such a rich perspective. And since nowadays maybe it's famous, this is why I'm seeing it a lot, that this space agencies are sending pictures of galaxies. They're very colorful pictures. So it says, this is with naked eye, one picture, this is with X-ray, this is with another one. So it's all looking at the same location in the space, but if you look at it with just the telescope, naked telescope, it shows you one thing. If you look with X-ray or with radio frequency, different radio frequency, it shows you a different picture. So likewise, I guess in here we are looking at the same thing, but it shows us of divine unity from different angles.
Yeah. Does anyone have any further comments, questions? Maybe people from online who we haven't heard from yet? Okay, well, feel free to interrupt with your questions and comments, whatever they may be.
So, if you don't mind, I'm going to read the verses at the very beginning again, after these three windows, for instance. So, God is the creator of all things, and he is the guardian and disposer of all affairs. Read this in the light of those three windows, and also put yourself as part of this all beings and all affairs, because I'm having affairs with people, sometimes happy, sometimes sad experiences, and I just blame people for the outcome, or blame myself. I mean, not to say that when it comes to my choices, this is another issue, this is where I am going to be blameworthy, but as the things are coming into being, am I an exception of this creator of all things? Am I an exception of this all things, the things that I went through in life? Are they random? Are they just meaningless? Because every particle was opening windows. How about me as a being? Then another verse, to him belong the keys of the heavens and the earth. So glory to him in whose hands is the sovereignty of all things, and to him will you all be brought back. Does anybody have the verse open? What was the verse in here? So glory to him. Here it is. فسبحان الذي بيده ملكوت كل شيء وإليه ترجعون. Okay. Because in here he says, to him will you all be brought back. And I guess this is the interpretation of the translator, if I'm not wrong. وإليه ترجعون. So if anybody knowing Arabic can help us, is this like a can be translated as a continuous form, or is it strictly future tense? ترجعون. Or is it like you are turning back to him?
I think it's continuous.
I think it's continuous as well, because I remember a comment that was made with Raju being like in the present moment, here and now.
Because this is what and how the fourth flash was telling us, right? Continuously we are observing this, that I am, like the sun is the reflection of sun over the droplet is coming from the sun right now. And once I look at it, I see that it is coming from it. So I am returning it back to the source, because otherwise it doesn't exist by itself. It tells me of its source right now. It's an ongoing thing. And there is not a thing, but its sources and treasures inexhaustible are with us, but we only send down thereof in due and ascertainable measures. This is very much, in the Arabic word, it will sound more familiar. وَإِن مِّن شَيْءٍ إِلَّا عِندَنَا خَزَائِنُهُ وَمَا نُنَزِّلُهُ إِلَّا بِقَدَرٍ مَعْلُومٍ. So the word qadar is from this verse. So I am going to observe this, and this is what the author is doing in here. Everything is coming into being within a measure. I do observe that nothing is happening haphazardly, as if it was defined. So whoever put this particle into my eyes, we just said, needs to know me yesterday and me tomorrow. So it's being located in my eyes right now, knowing me of past and future. This is already visible in front of my eyes. As an extension to this is coming the discussion of Qadr. But I guess first we need to make this observation in my existence here, existence of even a particle, that for this particle to be there before and after needs to be known. This is clearly the manifestation. And then I'm going to ask the question, am I an exception for that? Again, though, I'm going to put within parentheses, not to negate my freedom of choice. How am I going to combine the two? Inshallah, we will come to 26th word in 2 years. So keep following the discussion.
Yeah, and how do you think we can understand keys of the heavens and the earth within the context of the discussion we're having? I think, you're talking about when the verse says he's the guardian, disposer of all affairs. I guess this text reminds me that it's from the very minute to the very seemingly minute to seemingly significant, right? That each event, interaction, particle, existing thing points to the absolute one in its existence. But keys is an interesting word and image. I was just wondering how we can kind of understand that, even though it might be a bit of a larger discussion without taking it too.
Faraz might have an idea about that.
Any ideas, Brother Faraz?
You are baiting me into the. I'm just happy to listen to you guys. I mean, the question you asked is very interesting. Keys. I just thought about some verses in the Quran that talks about keys. Why does God say, put it like this? So I have the keys. It's interesting. I mean, my first response always is to come back to myself and say, I tend to think I have the keys. I mean, I think I can know what things are. I can find out their reality, or that at least I need to. I need to have access to what things are. What is the reality of things? What is my life? What is the meaning of things? And so this, the first thing I start thinking about is I need to know what is behind what I see. And as if this metaphor says, there's doors and it's locked and you don't have the key. And you need to know what's on the other side. You need to know what is behind all this, and you can't get it. And so it's partly very depressing. It's partly very disarming. I can either fight, I can say, no, I'm going to open it. I'm going to break in. I'm going to, or I can say, I don't want to go in there anyway. I'm just happy here without any doors being open to me. Or I can come back and, so it just stands there as a, how do you say, like teasing me, making faces at me, saying that, I know you need this key. I know you need to go through this door. You need to find out. Just come when you're ready, because you don't have it. You don't have the keys. You don't know what you're doing. You don't know what things are, but you need to. There is something in me that just cannot completely find peace, inner peace, and not know what things mean and what they are, and still I have to pretend, I have to struggle to distract myself. It's not easy. So anyway, I mean, those are the kinds of things I start thinking about when keys mentioned. I don't know if this is something that what you were asking about from the text, but I mean, the metaphor is really interesting. Keys of the treasures.
So there was once a puzzle. Generally in puzzles, they print a picture over the puzzle, so you know what the big picture looks like, so you can put them together. But I remember there was this weird puzzle. It was just a green puzzle. It's like flat color, and let's say it has 1,000 pieces, whatever, and it doesn't have well-behaving boundaries. so that you can start boundaries either. So it's like a very awkward puzzle. And they were granting, I don't remember, but I'm just going to throw a number, let's say $1 million, whoever can solve the puzzle. And they were saying that the manufacturing company put the key to the puzzle, the solution to the puzzle, in a safe somewhere. So if somebody comes up with a solution, submitting it, and yeah, see, now I completed the puzzle. So I mean, the key in here reminded me of this puzzle being solved. So the existence itself is a riddle, and it doesn't make sense if I try to. I mean, the key for solving the puzzle is who, like who, without referring to the source of this existence. Outside of the existence, I cannot really explain what's going on in here. It doesn't make sense. It's going to break up. Let's say from a corner, I start building it up. I say, yeah, the first amino acid, then the second, like, let's say biologically, I'm trying to explain, coming up with a quote unquote plausible story to explain how life has formed at some point. Then it comes to a point, then what's the purpose of life? What's the point of life? Even if I accept such a story, I mean, still it doesn't explain how life is ongoing, whatever. But aside from that, what's the point of life then? Why does it happen? So you see that it's just breaking down. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't answer my questions. It doesn't solve the riddle. I guess keys in this sense means, as I see that the source of this existence must be outside of this existence, and he must tell me what's going on in here, what was the purpose in here, then things start opening up. In addition to this, eventually Nursi is going to talk about human ego being also keys for human to understand the message in existence. Because human ego, through my senses, I get to know what the existence means. I guess these are different aspects of what this key might be. But eventually, in the context of this verse, without Hua, it doesn't occur to me what's the point of this existence.
So did anyone figure out the puzzle? It sounds like a self-inflicted torture activity.
Yeah, I don't remember if, but this was in the news at night for some time, because one of the newspaper was giving this puzzle as a kid. So I don't know what happened, if ever somebody solved it or not.
Right, so the moment I recognize my source of existence, the absolute one, necessarily existing one, then I am given the key to making sense and extracting meaning from that which I'm experiencing. That's what I want.
And I guess in the context of what we have been studying, let's say in the fourth flash, let's say, then every particle, if I do not say that they are coming from a sun, I mean they're a reflection of a sun, then I will have to accept that they are happening within every single particle is a sun, which was showing that it is falling to the degree of accepting 100-fold impossibility. So it doesn't work.
It's a borderless puzzle that gives me no meaning and endless frustration.
And it doesn't fit.
Yeah. Thank you for that.
So I guess if we're going to move on, but this discussion reminded me, I recently was listening to a talk about an hour and a half, and I clicked on it because it said, what is the purpose of life? And there is this guy who's almost 90 years old, and apparently he started when thinking about serious things since he was maybe 40. So it's been almost 50 years that he now spent thinking, starting with, all the history and philosophy and literature that he could read, and really kind of, and also, he's from a Muslim background in India, Pakistan, and, so having that sort of Quran and everything. And when he was asked, what is the purpose of life? he spoke for an hour and a half about things that are not in themselves false, how different people have different capacities. There's the animal side and the human side, and the human side there's different capacities, emotional and intellectual, and how those emotional and intellectual needs, based on how those needs are shaped and how much developed, how much one aware is one of those needs, then the purpose is to fulfill those needs. So everyone will have different purposes at different times of their lives. And so, from one aspect, you could say yes to everything because yes, okay, yes. But it somehow ends with still everything being self-referential. So, okay, so I have this need, and then this need came to me because of how the society or my situation, or how much aware I was of my need, and then I'm going to fulfill this need. It's a human need, but it wasn't very clear what is human need, except that it's not biological needs, it's something different, emotional needs, okay, but so what are they? But emotional needs is just emotional need, it just refers to itself. And so maybe it could mean that you want to be loved, or you want attention, and then you get loved, or you want to love someone and you love them, and that was your purpose. So it makes so even when even when people don't talk about material things, but let's say higher things and higher motives and higher needs, they still leave something in the end. Okay, so why? The question. So what is the purpose of? You can still ask, as if I found myself still asking the question, but what is the purpose in having the need to love? Well, how is that meaningful? And so, it just seems that, and I wanted to listen to him tell me something after 50 years of reflection. Clearly I'm nowhere near. I'm barely started. I claim to. I think that I've spent a lifetime studying the Quran, but I have nothing. I am just 40. I don't even. I'm just trying to get over myself, and really come to reality of what I really am and where I am. But he's 90. He's close to leaving the world, and he's aware, and so that maybe he will. I mean, I'm sure he's sharing honestly what he has. He's not hiding anything, or he's not lying. But then I felt that, part of me felt that I feel if I recognize that these needs are signs to something, a very simple, Quranic claim, it just makes it that these are actually not self-referential. This is not this. The meaning of this is what it tells me about the owner of these qualities, the maker of these. And I felt that he was very sophisticated, but he thought this is too simplistic to bring in this idea of the owner of these qualities, the maker, because that would mean God, and that would be just, religion, and that's just all kinds of things and stupidities. And so I don't know what makes people, but I felt that maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm conceited, but I felt that compared to that 90-year-old, I felt what I found with me better on account of that these things, the meaning that I can get, I don't most of the time, but at least I know that I can get a kind of meaning and purpose to the things happening in my life that's much more satisfying and leaves, less things unaddressed and less questions than this person, very wise, very well read, but still answering the purpose of something by referring to something else in the world and something else in the world. And it just kind of, again, you can ask, but what is the purpose of that? Anything that so anyway, yeah. So, I don't know what the value of sharing that was, but it seems that, I guess I'm saying that it's very valuable to be able to say God and actually mean something by it. It's very valuable because a lot of people, I feel, are looking for meaning, but they say God, but it doesn't mean anything. And then they keep trying to say other things, they're hoping that that would mean something, and it just keeps, you never arrive at meaning.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Yeah, just on what you were saying last, even at least I experience it in myself where sometimes, we talk about, or I talk about source of existence and the absolute one, and, if I don't catch myself, it starts to sound very trite to me sometimes, just like these phrases and modes of reasoning that I seem to have memorized or become habituated with, rather. And even just earlier again in this class, I was asking like, okay, what's the point of these examples that it felt very like, okay, I get it. Do you have anything new to offer in my interaction with the text? But I guess, yeah, just like the significance of being able to conclude upon an absolute one. And just going back to the verse where it says, to him belong the keys of the heavens and the earth. The key is only as valuable as that which it opens the door to, or the safe to, or whatever it opens towards. And if it's about the meaning of life, or if it's just the meaning that I search for in my interactions, whether that interaction is with my mother or my father or anyone, with anyone that I care about, with anyone that I care for an interaction to be meaningful for, even if I'm just in an elevator with someone and someone starts talking to me, I'll scoff and just huff and puff because I don't want to have to do any sort of social interaction that is meaningless, that doesn't have any meaning, that doesn't contribute to my life. And that, I used to think that sounds kind of selfish, but maybe it's kind of human to expect some utility and benefit, but that benefit and utility being in the form of meaning and answer to that which I'm ultimately searching for in all of these interactions that I have. And so if my recognition of my source of existence is the key to that which I'm searching for, then it becomes extremely significant as well. I mean, the key increases in immense value. But if I don't feel the need for what that key opens towards, then it's just kind of like another key on the chain, sort of like those keys, chain sets that like become heavier and heavier because you're adding so many things to it, and it starts to like even bend your car key because of the weight of all the other stuff. So yeah, just I guess trying to keep for myself alive and conscious the significance, practical significance and relevancy and impact of what it means for me to recognize divine unity in a particle, in a seed, in my eyeball, in anything that I am interacting with. Yeah, thank you for that. Anyone else have any comments? Or else I'm just going to continue reading. Okay. Also from those online that we haven't heard from, so I'll just call them out. Brother Asim, Brother Mohammed Syed, and Brother Suhail. If you guys have any comments or questions, just feel free to jump in. So here Nursi continues after the example of the flower pot and the seed. He says, that is to say, so if the connection with Almighty God is severed, it becomes necessary to accept God to the number of particles of earth, and this is an impossible superstition compounded 1,000 times over. And I think as what Brother Yusuf was saying, he's not just kind of making an idiomatic phrase of compound 1,000 times over, but by virtue of the fact that there's 1,000 particles or more in that earth. And when we claim that that earth is the source of existence of whatever comes out of it, then we are in fact making an assertion that includes 1,000 assertions in a sense. However, he says, when they are officials, and we had understood officials to mean things that in and of themselves represent that they can't be the source of anything. So in their lack of action, in their inability, they become officials in their sign and indication towards the one who is capable, who must be, rather. It becomes extremely easy. Just as in his king's name and through his power, common soldier of a mighty king can make a whole country migrate, or join two seas, or take another king prisoner, so at the command of the monarch of pre-eternity and post-eternity, a fly did away with Nimrod, and an ant destroyed Pharaoh's palace, raising it to the ground, and a fig seed bears the load of a fig tree. Moreover, in all particles are two further truthful witnesses to the Maker's necessary existence and unity, or I would say absoluteness. One is that together with their absolute impotence, so together with the absolute impotence of all particles, they all perform most important and various duties. The other is that despite the lifelessness of these particles, they all conform to the universal order and systems, thus displaying a universal consciousness. That is to say, through the tongue of its impotence, each particle testifies to the necessary existence of the absolutely powerful one. So I think this is, again, what we were touching upon when we said something is an official or a particle is an official. Through the tongue of its impotence, that particle is declaring itself as an official because it testifies to the necessary existence of the absolutely powerful one. And through its conforming to the order in the world, each testifies to his unity or absolute nature.
Why do you say unity is absolute?
I think unity points to the fact that whatever that source is, it must be absolute. So for me, I have trouble sometimes making sense of the word unity. Like what does it mean for something to like divine unity? What is divine unity? And I think when we conclude that something is absolute, that encompasses what divine unity is. I think that's not a totally satisfactory answer, but
So the meaning of unity that I got from the text was that you can take a particle from one spot, put it into another, and it's going to still work perfectly fine. And since we are saying that the particle cannot be the one behind this, because that would be illogical, that means that there's one that is controlling the particle in its previous state, and now it's in a new state. So like you can find unity that way. Like everything is working in like perfect harmony. Like they're listening to one source. That's what I'm understanding from unity. And when you say absolute, I guess for me it's hard to make that jump just to see that.
But it seems like what you're describing is exactly what I would imagine absoluteness to encompass. So where do you think is the jump from?
I guess when I think absolute, I just think it cannot be of the type of this existence. It needs to be outside, or like something that I can't comprehend. Mm-hmm. Or basically by absolute it means I've come to the end of, I see a quality, I've come to the, I can't find it to exist within anything here. But I see that the quality still exists. So I know that its source must be outside of the things I'm looking at. And that is absolute for me. The source is outside. So unity is more like a specific name that I see is when I see everything is acting perfectly in harmony, or it's everything knows its role and acts perfectly within that role, even if you come and put it in like some place it hasn't been, or just in any random place, it'll still act in its role.
Yeah, I think the two point to each other. You know, that makes sense to me. I think they're referential of each other, both divine unity and absoluteness, according to descriptions that you gave. I think must point to each other. You know, one that has divine unity must also be absolute.
So I guess so far he talked about 3 windows, and now he's talking about 2 witnesses.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, in all particles, there are 2 further witnesses, to Maker's necessary existence and to Maker's unity, right? So from one aspect, it's going to show us that Maker's, we would say, such a Maker must exist. And the second one would mean such a Maker must be unique. I guess this is what I'm trying to just literally follow in the text. So it says, through the absolute impotence of things, yet they perform a lot of duties. So that means they cannot be the door, so there must exist an absolutely powerful Maker. So this requires that such a being must exist. And the order, but this also happens within an order. They say, what does the order imply? Order implies that such a one is, again, I'm reading it very flatly and simply, such a one is unique. And there is no multiplicity in there. It's single source, a unique source. There is no multiplicity of choice meddling its finger in the existence. It's coming from a single source.
Does the original text use ahadiyya for unity?
No, Vahide.
Yeah, and I think, again, in this paragraph, it's stressing, just like how the fourth clash was about the action of giving of life, it's stressing upon the lifelessness of these particles, despite them displaying a universal consciousness. How can we understand universal consciousness? I mean, I guess the sentence after it kind of explains it.
I guess this perspective is interesting because our training makes us read things on behalf of themselves, but in here author is suggesting us to read that the particle, by its existence, it testifies to the existence of an all-powerful one. Because when we look at the particle, we do say particle exists. But in here he says the particle, the way that it exists, meaning that it is in need of things being done, but it itself is powerless, unconscious being. Yet it is functioning in such and such way. So then, since it requires things to be done, it requires power, knowledge, whatever, but it doesn't have it itself in the first place. But still, like we look at the water droplet, we observe that there's nothing in the water droplet, but there is reflection of sun. So there must exist a sun. So it's not saying that don't simply say, oh, water droplet exists. Look at the water droplet and say that, oh, there must exist a sun. And then take it one step further and say that I do observe all different suns in all those different particles, but they all come from a single sun. It's not that there are multiple suns and then these reflections are coming from different suns. No, the order within the reflections, the manifestation, show that there is only a single sun. And everything is the reflection of the same source. It's not that there are multiple sources out there. And to me, the order is testifying that, as I observe the order.
Any other comments? Yeah, I really just like that last sentence. Through the tongue of its impotence, each particle testifies to the necessary existence of the absolute powerful one. And through its conforming to the order in the world, each testifies to his unity.
Everyone is thinking very deeply. You have any comments? No? Questions? Objections? Hesitations? Alright, I'll continue reading them. Just as every particle testifies in two ways to his being the necessarily existent one of unity, just as every particle testifies in two ways to his being the necessarily existent one of unity, so too on every living being there are two signs that he is the single and eternally besought one. While we think on that Mohammed side, please go ahead.
I thought I would like to say something about this consciousness part as you asked. I think it is definitely related to the purposeful motion of the things, or a purposefulness in the things. Because of that, I think that's I name it as like a consciousness, or in my world, a purposeful motion is definitely related to a consciousness or conscious choice, or because if the result is not is purposeless, then I don't think I have any room for consciousness. Just want to share.
Yeah, thank you for that. Any other comments, questions, inquiries? So let me, and if you want to go back to any other part of the text, please feel free to interrupt me, as I've said many times. Just as every particle testifies in two ways to his being the necessarily existent one of unity, so too on every living being there are two signs that he is a single and eternally besought one. Yes, and all living beings are a seal of divine oneness and a stamp of eternal besottedness. For each displays together in the mirror of its being most of the divine names, the manifestations of which are apparent in the universe. Quite simply, like a point of focus, each displays, so the each referring to all living beings, display the manifestation of the greatest name of ever-living and self-subsistent one. Thus, since it shows a sort of shadow of the oneness of the divine essence under the veil of the name of giver of life, it bears a stamp of divine oneness. And since the living being is like a miniature sample of the universe and a fruit of the tree of creation, it shows a seal of divine eternal besottedness, which conveys altogether with ease to this tiny sphere of its life its needs, which are as many as the universe. Let me read that sentence again. And since the living being is like a miniature sample of the universe and a fruit of the tree of creation, it shows a seal of divine eternal besottedness, which conveys altogether with ease to the tiny sphere of its life its needs, which are as many as the universe. That is to say, this shows it has a sustainer whose regard and favor take the place of all things. Everything in existence cannot take the place of his regard. So that's a mouthful. Would anyone like to break this down for us and help me out, please? Anyone here or online? I'll give it a moment as you gather your thoughts.
Aditya Beza?
She is present, yes.
Okay. What was the question? I'm sorry.
I should have moderated.
Oh, no. The question was if anyone wanted to kind of give away their takeaways from the paragraph we just read. So I'm being very stubborn in my mutedness by forcing someone to speak up through the uncomfortable silence.
I see. Let me join you in waiting.
I'll make a copy.
Yeah, go.
All right, so one thing that attracted my attention in part is how literally anything that I interact with, anything
that I experience in existence, or I ponder about, is then in the way it is existing, is looking to the necessarily existent one of unity. So breaking this down, the text refers to it as the impotence, right? When I see certain qualities and I say, yes, those qualities cannot be from this thing itself, yet it still portrays these qualities. And at the same time, it follows a certain order. It's systematic, or systematic not in the sense that it's a system that it follows like a code. But there is a order as I try to make sense of it, right? So the first aspect, the two different ways. The first aspect saying, kind of negating that the one who must have brought these into existence cannot be of the nature of the universe. But at the same time, also that I lost my train of thought. I was going to try to say. All right, so the universal consciousness, that because of the order and the system that I experience in every single particle, so I don't have to, I think this was also spoken about in another halakha too, like I don't have to travel all around the universe. I can just sit here as I am and just come to the same conclusion, that once I perceive the order, which is hard to disregard anyway, that it must be coming from a sort of consciousness, that there, as Muhammad said, was pointing out, like there must be a purposefulness, or rather, because it is that I perceive it as in a systematic and purposeful way, must be coming from a conscious will. So that's in part what attracted my attention, just basically repeating what the text, or my understanding of the text, but filling in the...
I thought that was beautiful, thank you.
Yeah.
Is the question in the text, is this two, the two at the bottom of the page, it says, there are two signs that he is, the next one. Each displays the manifestation of the greatest name, ever living and self-subsistent. Is this Hayy and Qayyum?
Yes.
Yeah.
I guess in this last paragraph, he is talking about Ahad and Samad. He said, so I'll just reread the text with the Quranic verbs. So yes, all living beings are a seal of Ahadiyya, divine oneness, and a stamp of eternal besoutedness, Samadiyya. And then it says, for each displays together in the mirrors of its being most of the divine names, the manifestations of which are apparent in the universe, quite simply like a point of focus. Each displays the manifestation of the greatest name of ever-living Hayy and self-subsistent Al-Qayyum. Thus, since it shows a sort of shadow of the oneness of the divine essence, Hadiyyat Zatiyya, under the veil of the name of giver of life, Al-Hayy, Muhyi, actually.
So this is interesting. So there is ahadiyya of in life giving. It's the ahadiyya of Hayy, and it's the samadiyya of, or rather the qayyumiyya of. The samadiyya of the Qayyum. So, am I wrong? Am I to say it like this? He's connecting Hayy, life giving, with Ahadiyya, one life, the absolute life giver, and besotted, eternal besottedness with self-subsistent. Is he? Am I wrong to say he's making these connections?
I mean, that makes sense to me.
Yeah, and in other words, it's important to see that the source of life, of all life and my life, is nothing but the one, let's say, Ahad, the one who must have all power, all the source of life, the giver of life. And then to understand that my life, the fact that my life continues to exist, that it's not a singular event that ended, and that it cannot be that singular event. Okay, life giver gave life, and then how is their life now? How is there the continuation of life as I experience it? And this must be explained by the, how shall we say, by this, by the fact that how shall we say, my continuing, I don't want to confuse this, my subsistence, the subsistence of my life, it looks to continuously to someone who must be continuously besought by me, so that he's sustaining me, so that because otherwise I start to think, okay, I have life, and I say somebody gave me life, but then he gave me life, but now I have life, or then now the things responsible for the sustenance of my life, the things that I saw are sought by me for my life to continue, the things that I regard responsible for my continuing existence, because he uses the word regard in the end, regard and favor, yeah? So who in my eyes, the things that I say, this is now responsible for my existence. I have regard for these things as responsible for keeping me in existence, keeping me alive, or keeping the life alive. This life was given by God, okay, but it continues to look to something, the regard, the mercy, as if I'm saying to the things, please keep me in existence, please. Please make sure I don't go out of existence now that I got it. And he's saying like this is not the case, that actually it all, my life, after it comes into existence, continually seeks, or the besotted, who must therefore be someone who is continuing to qayyum, continuing to give me life. So he subsists as a life giver. And therefore he can give life, so he must be self-subsisting, because he continues to give life, and therefore is not subject to death. So that then I can actually, in my existence, which is like the origin of existence and the continuation of existence all together, I have a sustainer whose regard and favor takes the place of all things. Yeah, it is one of those things that I feel if I really, when I am in a state, when I feel my existence, I want to keep it and I can't keep it. It's such a precious life God gave me, but, when I'm feeling that, but all the things that, as if I feel that my existence depends on these things, and these things are so undependable on which I depend. So when in that state of mind, this paragraph would be really, or this understanding of qayyumiyya, of the life giver, would be really a breath of fresh air and really nice. But otherwise, if I'm not in that state, it feels very intellectual and complex, unnecessarily wordy. But yeah, I don't know. That's how I feel.
So there's a hospital in Philadelphia which is closing up in September. So this hospital used to be belonging to another investor last year. So the new investor bought it this year. But they say it's just consuming so much money, the system is not working, that they said, okay, we are not going to sustain this business anymore. And they're closing up the hospital altogether, and it's a relatively old hospital. So because there are a lot of workers, a lot of need for this hospital to run, and the investor is not able to really feed the consumption. Life is as such. I mean, in order for me to live, I need everything. So, and my investor needs to be really so rich, richer than the guys that bought this hospital for the purpose of investment, because I need the whole universe to survive. I mean, at least practically speaking, I need the sun to shine, I need the air, I need the plants and food, and also I need to be happy, I need to be fulfilled with an eternal life, I need to be cheered up, this and that, a lot of things that I need. And I kept being maintained. So my life is just, it keeps still being provided. Like looking at this hospital, the investor said, okay, the hospital is in need of money, but I cannot provide it forever because they don't have infinite resources themselves. So if they keep feeding the hospital's expenses, who is going to feed them? So, but I am constantly being fed. My life is constantly being fed. I am so much needy, but I am being fed with all my material and immaterial needs. So what does this tell me? So my provider is, like with all other living beings, must have an unending source, because we are being fed in an unending way. So I guess this is both al-Qayyum, meaning that he himself must have some sort of no problem with the resources at all. So he must be self-subsistent. It's not like that he is being outsourced and then he provides resources for me. Doesn't make sense. So this is where I guess it boils down to a samad, meaning that as I am being provided nonstop, he mustn't be in need of anything because a needy one cannot provide me. This is what I am observing in this existence. And it really saves me from worries because my desires are endless. So if my provider is limited, it's like doom for me. Saying that, okay, I have this unlimited imagination, unlimited desires, and I am doomed that they can never be met. So I guess in this sense, every particle and every living being, by being sustained and provided nonstop, is saying that our provider is sustaining itself. It's not that he is in need of anything else. It cannot happen. It mustn't be the case. And as I was trying to understand from the text when he talks about ahadiyya, so I am observing all these different things in life. And the author is saying that this knowing that my maker is ahad. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم وآخر دعواهم الحمد لله رب العالمين